Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Cruz.
This is Dan.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
Nathan
This
East.
is Sebastian Younger.
This is David Lab.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick
I'm
Gillette.
Christopher
This is
Knopf.
Dr. Bob Greenberg.
I'm Laird Hamilton.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, I'm Mark Valley.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
This is John Krotec from Green Zone Hero and Straight Outta Combat Radio. You're listening to me on The Break It Down Show.
And now, The Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero, Mark Valley, and Pete A. Turner.
This is my buddy John Krotec. I'm going to let him give you his bio here in a second. What I do want to let you guys know is he's doing an incredible thing. He's building a brand where we focus on what veterans go through, how we live, how we survive, what our stories are. There's an incredible thing called the Angel Brigade Radio. Is that right, John? Is that what we call it?
That's another project right now, but right now it's Straight Outta Combat Radio as a tool for our company, Green Zone Hero.
Sure.
Angel Brigade is something else. And then Task Force N, we won't even get into because I know you and I are going to be working on that down the road, but there's a lot of things going on with us right now.
Yeah, it's exciting. So give us real quick, like a 1 minute bio of what you are, who you are. I mean, we know you're not a combat warrior, but I guess you give you credit anyhow. But
you're freaking me out, man. No, I actually born in Germany as an Army brat. Got a brother and two sisters. Grew up in Florida, traveled around a bit. Graduated FSU. Was in the corporate management for restaurants for a while. Then I went in kind of late. I went in at 28 years old. Served as an NCO in the 4th Infantry Division, Fort Carson, Colorado. Got out at that time. There's 2 and 3 and 4 year enlistments. I did the 3-year enlistment. Got out. Came back to Florida. Met my wife. Opened a business for 23 years. We ran guided trips to the Andes. Sold a lot of equipment, ropes, ice axes in Florida. And then had an interesting dilemma happen to me with a DUI accident and changed the course of my life. And I'm here to coming back like a phoenix, I guess you could say, and trying to find the right people to do some really good things for not only the United States of America, but for people that are hurting in general.
Yeah, I like to say that I rise from the ashes like a phoenix with a limp.
Exactly, man. You got it. You know me, man.
Yeah, and let me just say, you don't need this, but I'm going to say it for you anyhow, but mostly for the audience. When I give John a little bit of grief about not being a combat warrior, that has nothing to do with anything, because it's the second you sign up, and this is me saying this about any veteran. I don't care if you're trans, a woman. I don't care if you screw up and get kicked out. You volunteered to serve this country. You are all right in my book. You are absolutely a hero. And whether or not you deploy, it's not, that may not be your job. Maybe you're just going to be the guy that helps do things that I can't do when I'm deployed, and I need that help. And we're all on the same team. So just the simple fact that you volunteer to serve our great nation, I thank you. And your willingness to say, hey man, I'm not trying to be PC. I'm trying to get things done. I got all day for that. It doesn't mean you get to be a jerk, but you're not a jerk. It's one thing to say, I'm not going to be PC. You're a beep, 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 beep. That's wrong. You don't do that. You just let's get to candor. Let's get to where the work is. Let's get things done. And dude, I dig that about you.
I thank you for that. It gives me chills and kind of a tear in my eye, but I'm proud of what I did, and I'm proud of the buddies that I served with. And when I got out, my unit went to the first Gulf War, and I missed that. I joined the reserves. And that was, that's the only way I could go back in. They weren't taking any prior service unless you were Special Forces qualified, but served with the Field Artillery Unit here with the 81st ARCOM. And I'm really happy that I was able to sign that dotted line. And it just, what it's like.
I was on your show. That episode hasn't posted yet because we're actually recording it immediately after I recorded your episode. But you asked me a good question, and I wanted to ask you that same question. You talk to veterans all the time on your show. We get some on our show, but you get more exposure to us than I do. What do people need to know about veterans that maybe they don't understand?
Well, the amazing thing that I see in every single one of them, the ladies and the men who have served in a combat environment, is that these are truly freaking special people. And I get the feeling that a lot of people don't believe that don't understand the combat veteran, but they're superhumans. And I just, I feel very humbled and honored whenever I speak to a combat veteran and one that's survived. And I've met, Gold Stars, but I just think that they're just superhuman with skill sets, and they need to know that. They really need to know that. And we're doing our best to break that stereotype. And I loved what you said at the end of the show, that basically the same thing, that, if somebody's looking at a combat veteran or a veteran in general, they're going to get a special person that is dedicated, loves what they do for the most part, and understands teamwork. You mentioned on your show, on our interview, about working in different cultures. I mean, they've got everything that they need to be successful. They just need a chance, and they need to break out of the stereotype, Pete. It just drives me freaking nuts when an event happens and they make it look like every veteran in the world is just half cocked, trigger happy, ready to go off at a moment's notice. That's just bullshit.
Yeah. This is a conversation going on right now. We had Ty Smith, a retired SEAL who works for Vigilance Risk now, and he works on workplace violence. And we were talking about, I don't know if it's all on mic or not, but we talked about the bifurcated perception of veterans, that you could put a veteran in a school and all of a sudden that school will be somehow more protected because a veteran is there. Well, that's not true. That's a highly, when a school shooter comes in, they have all the advantage. They've decided what they're going to do, how they're going to do it. They've fantasized about it. Some people will do it in a fit of rage, for sure. We're not talking about that. That's even more crazy. But just to think that because someone has been in combat, they may never have seen a bullet or seen the enemy ever. They may legitimately are a combat warrior, but maybe their job was to ensure that food got to places. And they pushed paper. So just because they're a veteran doesn't mean that they have this incredible skill set. And then this, we can talk about this all day long. As a reservist, as a regular Army person, you may shoot 500 rounds in a year. And that's a box of ammo, basically. I mean, it's not that much. And that's 500. I'm leaning on the heavy side. It's incredible what we think veterans are on that end of the scale. They're not superheroes with guns who can magically go out and save the day. That is a dedicated skill that is perishable and very hard. And I can shoot like crazy, but I'm not. I'd be terrified to have to shoot in that environment, to have to prepare for that, what that would take. That would move me to do that nonstop, and it should be my full-time job. The other side is don't have the perception that veterans are somehow crazy and that we're crazed and going to go out and kill a bunch of kids because we're in this environment and our PTSD is going to trigger. Like, you know nothing about us if you think that's true. And let's fix that. Let's fix both sides of this misconception. Understand that what we're talking about is one of the most challenging combat things with kids running around.
Yeah, that's a great point that you point out. Our tagline is combat veterans are real people. And, what does real people mean? It means that they have the same foibles, the same strengths as the general population. Our point is that, don't be on that one spectrum where you think these combat veterans are crazed. They actually might be the lady or the man that you need to turn your company around or to do something great. I say those could be they are the future leaders, but they could be the next great whatever, school teacher, corporate CEO, anything, police officer, doctor, dentist. Just give them a chance.
Yeah, that's it. Just give them a chance. Give these guys a chance to do something. Even if you don't know what to do, think about what they do for you. I don't know what to do when I go to combat. I don't know what to do in this patrol, but I do it. I go out and I'm like, all right, who can I ask questions? What do I not know right now? What questions do I need to be ready to ask before I go out? So if you want to help a veteran, heck, ask me at Pete A. Turner on Twitter. You can find me and say, all right, what can I do to help? And I will put you in front of organizations that help people. We need mentors. We need mentors desperately. Like, I'm going to transition. How do I do it? We all disagree on how to do it. And the other problem is as we're helping ourselves write better resumes, get better at answering interview questions, here's what we don't have. We don't have open doors at companies. Yes, a company will talk to a veteran and say, yeah, sure, here's the warehouse. Here's a security vest, and stand here and make sure nothing bad happens. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people. A captain in the Army has a BA degree and 5 to 10 years of experience working in an organization, planning operations, logistics, all kinds of things. Put that person in a role where they can lift your company up. So you want to know what to do. That's what you do. You come and you talk to me, and I put you into some place where you can understand what it takes to help us. That's what help looks like.
I think you're so right. There is no one way to do it. I think the point that we're all trying to make is just get out there and do it. Make something happen. Make the connections. And what I loved what you said in our show previously about networking. I can't overspeak networking. It's so important and so vital, to the network. And, we can nowadays with technology, and this, Pete, we can create a global network. You were talking about the LinkedIn and all these connections. It's phenomenal, the power that we got with these technological tools.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And people that want like, oh, you know what? I have a rule on LinkedIn. Like if you're a military person and you try to link with me, yeah, I know you. You're in the military. I know you. It's fine. Let's do it. Let's help out. And there's a lot of people that take that thing so we can connect. It's not enough, but it gets us going in the right direction. Let's close the chapter on that. And let's talk a little bit about what you're trying to build with the Green Zone Heroes. And let's talk a little bit about Straight Outta Combat.
Well, thank you for that. My foray into all this really, we had talked about it early when I was 11 years old. So I learned, I was assaulted as a young boy at that time, and it stuck with me throughout all of my life and still does. I struggle with some of those things every day, but what it made me realize is that you can come back no matter what happens to you. Obviously, at that time, there was a social stigma attached to boys that maybe had been assaulted like that. And so I knew very early on that to even speak up and say anything probably would have been very bad for me. The reality is it would have been very good for me. But anyhow, long story short, we speed up through college, being in the military, and I did love the Army. Just give you, and I'm not bragging on myself, but 3 years, 2 RCOMs, 3 AAMs, and an MSM after 3 years of peacetime active duty at Fort Carson.
That's pretty good.
I loved my job, and I loved my chain of command. I loved my buddies in arms, and just it had a blast, and then got out, tried to get back in. First Gulf War kicked off. That didn't work out for me. Like I said, they were taking no prior service, went into the reserves, and I got to shoot big guns, 8-inch howitzers. Those guys were always making fun of me, pulling the cherry and all that, but what a weapon that is. So that was a lot of fun and very interesting. And, then I left the service and came back to Florida and met my wife. We ran a small business. We sold ice axes and ropes in the state of Florida. I personally sold about 16,000 pairs of hiking boots.
Jesus, wow.
Yeah, I'm in Florida, so I know about odds and how to run a business. And
you literally sold like snow to Eskimos. Like
we had a really busy shop, and actually I sold it to my best friend from high school 3 years ago, and those guys still run it. But I had an opportunity to do something different. I helped manage the volunteer corps at the Nathan Benderson Park here in Sarasota, Florida, and I was on the team that helped bring the World Championships of rowing back to the U.S. It hadn't been here since '94. I personally was involved in managing 12,000 volunteers, over a 5-year period of time. And what ended up happening was I ended up in a bad moment, alcohol-related accident, nearly killed myself. I had a TBI, and really things started to spin out of control. Within 2 years, my wife filed for divorce. I was in a bad place I quit that job at the Nathan Benderson Park, tried to get another business going. That didn't work out. We tried to do a race course, obstacle race course with veterans involved, and was not capitalized. And then I went to visit my wife. Her mom basically changed my life. Her mom slipped and fell at 93 and broke her shoulder and her hip. My wife had to leave me, and we separated. She came up to Virginia. And I was on my own, and I went to surprise her in 2016. I showed up at her house, and she basically said, "Leave me alone. We're in the middle of the divorce. You're starting to stalk me now." And so I drove all the way back down to Jacksonville, Florida on Christmas Day. It was the first time I was out without my family in 27 years, and it was tough, man. I got up the next morning. There was just a lady that worked there and me at the breakfast, and I called somebody. I didn't feel right. And they kept me on the phone, and basically 47 weeks later of cognitive behavioral therapy, 6 months of hemp-based treatment, non-addictive hemp to help repair some brain damage from the TBI, and a lot of hard work won the heart of my wife back. And then Green Zone Hero came along. I was sitting at a fire prayer circle out behind my house with my business partner and trying to figure out what we were going to do. And he said, why don't we do something to promote businesses that actually care about veterans? And that's how it was born. And what we want to do is with Green Zone Hero, Green Zone is a relatively safe place in a combat zone. The Green Zone Hero is actually an American business, or now we have Canadians, Australians. It's a business that actually gives a darn about veterans. So we give them tools. We're a for-profit marketing company, B2B business. We give them tools to raise their game. And then in the course of all that, we had Harley Davidson recently come on and endorse us. We're helping to rebrand some of the things with that brand. And basically started straight out of combat radio about 16 weeks ago because, I was tired of, I've been working around veterans, seeing all these great people and reading what we're reading about. I wanted to start the podcast. And so that's what we did. We started talking to veterans on the ground floor level, and we want to heal. We want to educate. We want to be part of something that creates more commerce for companies that actually give a darn about veterans, active duty military, and their families. And in the healing process for me, I got to give a shout out to Bobby Henline, well-known comedian, and Jamie Burton of Bravo 748. I met them on LinkedIn about a year ago and told them my story, and they brought me into the fold, and I felt like I was at home because guys don't talk about sexual assault. And when I came out, of the closet, it was amazing to me how many men and women in some pretty high places approached me in private and said, John, thank you for telling your story, but I have a similar story. And it kind of blew me away to realize that 1 out of 3 girls is assaulted before 18 and 1 out of 5 boys. The boys don't talk about it, testosterone and all those kinds of things, social stigma. So, we're trying to break down the stigmas. We're trying to let people know that it's okay to deal with your issues, and it's okay to tell people about them. Because if you don't talk about it, you stuff it, and then you become one of those 20. Or it's even higher maybe for the general population. I don't know, but I just want to be talking to guys like you, Pete, that actually give a shit, and I shouldn't say that, but actually care. And I'm so very grateful and humbled to be in the United States of America. I didn't plan it that way. God did, but I'm glad that it happened that way. And I'm glad I had the parents I had despite their issues. And all I can say is all along the way, I've always had somebody that believed in me. But the greatest thing is I believe in myself because of the things that I've been able to overcome. And there's people that have been through so much worse, like Bobby Henline. When I first met Bobby, it was in Las Vegas a year and a half ago. He was doing a comedian gig at the hotel out there in Brad Garrett's Comedy Club and at the MGM, and it was awesome. And Bobby was blown up with his buddies. 4 of them or 3 of them were killed instantly. He calls them his angels. But to look at a guy like Bobby Henline and see what he has done with his life, we don't have any excuses. Reach down, dig deep. If you need help, reach out for it. Now, Pete, that we've made friends, I know that I can call you if I ever have one of those dark moments or I need advice, and that's what it's about. But don't hide yourself. So we're out to change the paradigm shift, to create more commerce for companies that care, to help heal and break down stereotypes for people that actually need it and deserve it and want it, and be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. So anyhow, I'm long-winded. Sorry. Thank you for giving me the time. But I just really looking forward to the future. I know it's one day at a time, one boot step at a time. And I just am very blessed. Thank you.
You've come from a long road of recovery. I mean, it's one thing to have an addiction problem, and it's another thing to have the abuse problem. But then you culminate that with the brain injury. One of the things we've learned a lot about on this show is what it takes to get a brain better. Literally, people say this all the time, but it's true. Like if you saw the wound on someone's arm, you would instantly want to care for them, and you would give them a pass on the things that they may or may not do. All of these things are big problems, and to work your way through it, it can be done. It's not always possible. And so for you to get through and to win back your wife and all the other things, despite all of these obstacles, it's incredible, but it also allows you to say, there's a lot of people out there that maybe could use some help. And I could have started, this is Pete saying this, I could have started my own recovery 6 months, 2 months, 6 years later, if I would have just, or earlier, I should say, if I would have just asked. There were people around and all kinds of services. I wasn't in a place, and maybe I needed that nudge or could have taken that nudge sooner. So it's powerful to hear you talk about that. And what you're doing is important. I'm cracking up that you were selling ice axes in Florida, because I lived the home theater for me where I like to go see movies was Parkland, because I lived in Margate, and it's right around the corner from there. It's interesting to look at all the people leaning forward on this veteran thing, and yet despite that, there's such disparaging things said and done towards veterans, like purposefully, like still in this day and age, taking these problems and political things out on people that serve our country. It's incredible to me. I wanted to ask you, as you talk to all the people on Straight Outta Combat podcast or radio, what are you pulling out? How is it changing your lives hearing all of our stories?
What we're looking for is authenticity and the level of honesty that we've been able to get with the people that we've talked to. I'm trying to pull out reality and the humanity of it all, that, we're not, like some of the hardcore Marines that we've had on there. These guys are warriors, and to see these field grade officers on their own struggles and journeys makes me realize that we're all in the same boat, and we all struggle with some of the same issues. And I just like the common bond that I hear from the ladies and the men. I've heard all different sides of the spectrums on so many things, but what I do hear is never give up. We've heard the coin so many times and cliche, and some people think that's just the mantra of the day. But for a lot of people that have struggled with those things, as most of these veterans have, never give up is not just a T-shirt slogan. It is like, it's their mantra. And you know what, Pete, and you hit upon this, it's every day, man. It's not like we just one day we take a blue pill and we're on the other side of Neo's world in the Matrix. The reality, we deal with it every day. John Preston, I don't know if you know John's story, but he's a Marine veteran, very talented individual, singer, songwriter out of California. I think he's out there in your area. And his brother, also a Marine, committed suicide a couple of years ago, and it's turned John's life around. And as a matter of fact, we were in San Antonio when I met him, and he was wearing a grunt style T-shirt that said "Straight Outta Combat." And John and I were there on the corner. I said, "Hey, John, that would make a great name for a story about our podcast or radio show with veterans." And he said, "Go for it, brother." And we did. And John's music has been on our show, and we've interviewed John. And what I liked about John is that he just believed. He told me, and this is what I hear from a lot of veterans, is that he said he wants to be one of the best recording artists, stars, guitar players ever. And he says, and I'm going to get there because I know what I'm made of, and I've got a story to tell. He's so super huge in support of educating about suicide, and because of his brother's situation, but he's affecting people's lives like you are, Pete, with this story here. And that's what really makes us human, is to reach down into our hearts and realize that we don't have to be Billy badasses with a chip on our shoulder all the time. We can be real people helping real people to make the world a better place. And it's not all hunky-dory and we're breaking out the sitars. What I'm saying is that we can create synergy with people, and we can understand people, and we can make it a better place if we just try.
Yeah, I agree. If we just try, and if we slow down for a minute, and work on hearing the person that we're talking to. A lot of this political debate, especially like with the Parkland shooting and another shooting. Don't tell me about AR-15s being the problem. Let's understand what triggers these things. What makes a person decide that that's their avenue? Because if we get rid of guns, that doesn't mean that we're going to get rid of this problem. And you're talking about an enormous political endeavor to do that. This is not just a stroke of a pen. So how do we get to these things? How do we get to these conversations? We had Sebastian Younger on our show, and he's a big advocate for what it means for service members to go out and do these things. And I said, what do you expect from us, combat guys and service members? And he's like, you guys, have done so much. You've deployed so many times and, given all these things. But what I'd like to see, what I think you owe us, is to help us here at home now. Help us bridge these gaps and get in between where we are, because we are so divided, and fight that. Try to fight that constant polarity that we seem to just crave. We put up our show with Ty Smith. It's a great conversation about what it takes to secure our kids. And I purposely pointed at both sides of the equation. It's not a veteran necessary. It's not a teacher with a gun. That's not going to be an answer. And that's a very right-sided conversation. But the reality is it's not going to be that. That's not the answer. And it's also very likely that one SRO in a school, Ty said it best, 2 is 1, 1 is none. If you have a SRO, school resource officer, with a pistol, don't have anything, because you've done nothing. And that person, you cannot expect that person to achieve the effect that you want inside of the 2 or 3 minutes that attack lasts. It's just not real. So let's get real. Let's have a real conversation about what we all can withstand and what can be done immediately. We can create a fund in Congress in a minute to give schools money for upgrading the facilities and putting more bullet-resistant glass, bullet-resistant sheetrock, all of these kinds of things. But we can't do that if we're worried about trying to get guns out of people's hands when people are saying, you're never going to take a gun out of my hand. I mean, this is crazy. So we got to get out of the middle. You got to get in the middle and say, why don't you guys come over here where you're uncomfortable, but we can get work done.
I couldn't agree with you more. Some relevant points. I think that when we talk about mental health issues, there's a lot of reasons and a lot of things that go on. I don't want to pretend to be a medical doctor or psychiatrist, but I do know that the social stigma often associated that's labeled to that person causes them to maybe not reach out. We can always say that there's markers and indicators, and usually somebody that's got mental health issues is going to have those. So that's not anything unusual, but maybe that person that did that felt he couldn't reach out, and the only way that he could express himself was to kill classmates.
Yeah.
Maybe if there wasn't such a social stigma with people that have issues, maybe we could actually make some groundwork on such, divisive issues. But, rather than focusing on the gun, let's focus on why that guy didn't get the help he needed.
Yeah.
The reason why I didn't do anything at 11 years old was because of that social stigma.
Sure.
About, first of all, something so intimate and personal, but something that I don't agree with. And it was scary, didn't know what the hell was going on, but I knew enough to know that the social stigma was gonna cause me more trouble. And it maybe if I had reached out earlier, I wouldn't have had so many issues throughout my life. But I wrote an article on LinkedIn in response to what just happened in Parkland, and I talk about honor and healing, and I talk about not being so reactive, that these future leaders of America are watching what us, the adults and business owners, are doing. How are we reacting? Is it with anger or fire with fire? Are we looking for good solutions? Or those kids are watching us. And I can tell you right now, if we continue the way we're going, all we're going to do is continue to spawn the same type of activity. Maybe we need to take a hard look at how we react and look for solutions that may work by maybe embracing these people, empowering them in a different way than this anger that creates so much killing and bloodshed. Maybe we need to listen to our youth.
Yeah.
Allow them and educate them about the law and educate them about the government and how our system works. And it's okay. You're not weak if you're dealing with an issue. Why don't we look at it that way? And as business owners, why don't we look at how we operate with our own branding? Maybe we need to be more compassionate in our messaging and, be part of it. But maybe we need to look inward first before we start pointing the fingers at everybody else who we think. And when you know what it's like, Pete, when you're pointing the finger at the other side, my wife is so beautiful when she says this to me, because she goes, there's 4 of them pointing back at you.
Yeah.
And you know what? It sounds so ridiculous, but the reality is before we go start blaming this atrocity, and damn, my heart goes out to the parents and the boy that did it and all those people that have been so damaged and people's lives have been ruined. And it happens on a daily basis because we don't have the cojones to reach down and do something different. And we don't have to change everything completely. You're not going to solve the issues of the human race overnight. But if you don't look at a different way of doing things, you're going to continue to get the same nonsense. It's not the guns. It's something that's wrong with the society itself. And we can do better. We're humans. We're the most creative species on the planet. Also the most destructive at times. But why don't we use our gray matter for something that helps humanity?
This episode of the Break It Down Show is brought to you by Lions Rock Productions.
That's us.
We publish, evaluate, and develop podcasts just like this one, consult others to build their own, and create associated content and content marketing strategies.
So if you're launching or expanding your social media presence, your business or your personal brand, or if you just want to take your media presence to the next level,
reach out to us on Twitter
at Pete A. Turner
or at JohnLG69.
at the Break It Down Show.
There's 1,000 ways to get a hold of us.
Now enjoy the show.
Rather than something that keeps us still fighting the same old fight and pointing the same old fingers.
Yeah. No, I agree. There's something more that we need to do. And instead of pointing at somebody else, this is kind of like the term limit argument, right? Like we need, and I'm not making a political argument, I'm making a point. Like we need term limits. Are you saying that you don't like my congressman? Because we all reelect our congressman, like 80-ish or so percent of the time the incumbent wins. And I think it's 80+% of us who don't like the members of Congress. So term limits are electing someone new. Like just do it. Or are you just saying that I need a new congressman because it doesn't agree with what you like? You know, these things that also the four fingers pointing back at you, like that stuff your mom says, but it's right. When we talk about corruption overseas, when we do things like, oh, that country is just so corrupt, when we go there we can't get anything done. Well, that's because we are also corrupt. Like when we bring a bag of money to solve our problems in a foreign place, we're the corrupter. You know, like
Absolutely. You know, it's like you say with term limits. I've heard both sides of the argument, but isn't that the beauty of this country to shake things up all the time? Why the status quo? Why 40-year politicians? No disrespect to the great job many of them have done, but come on, let's shake it up a little bit. Let's create let's be the United States of America that we were founded on.
Yeah.
Most progressive, and I can't use that word, but the most progressive, innovative country and government ever in the history of the world by some really serious rebels, rebellious people. Just about every time they almost got caught, and if some of them had got caught, they would have hung from a rope.
Right.
Where's that? Why don't we go back to our roots and dig deep and work together? I mean, you think the United States was created just on a genie bottle? It took sacrifice and teamwork.
Yeah.
Where is that? We have a chance to lead here, Pete.
Yeah, we do.
Podcast guys, let's sound the horn. You know, let's do it, man.
Doot. Let's go.
Let's go.
I agree. We need to. One of the things that I like to say, because I like to get to like the common denominator. Like, what's the easiest thing that we can do? What's simple? Like you're talking about big complex things. Like let's alter the Second Amendment. Okay, that's great. What's the simplest thing we can do right now, though? Like what can you and I do together? Like we can both write our congressman. I'll write yours. You write mine. You write mine. I write. You know, we'll both do it. Like nah, I don't want to do that. I want to complain on Facebook. Like well, I don't got time for that. Like what can we actually do right now? Like how we have the power. We have the amazing ability to govern ourselves. So let's govern ourselves. Let's put someone in power that we believe in. Find someone that you think, you know what, my best friend would be great at this. And this is a little bit fanciful, but you know, then you say, okay, how do we get this person elected? Maybe that's not possible. Maybe they don't know enough people. How do we get that person on the staff as someone that we can get elected so that they're influenced? You know, like, there's a lot you can do today that doesn't involve everybody else giving up their rights to accomplish your goal. I literally had a conversation with a guy, and he's like, the first thing we got to do is get to the 2018 elections so we can get all these Republicans out of Congress. And I'm like, Like, I'm worried about protecting kids. I'm not trying to win a political fight,
Yeah, I mean, just so many silly things people say, but it's a great question. And you know what, Pete? You're right. It's a freaking huge task. But you know what? If we stay committed, and I believe this, man, because, we have all had mentors. You can remember your first grade teacher, I'm sure. But if we can educate our kids, let the kids know the facts, teach them some compassion and give them stories of hope.
Yeah.
Not one that, we haven't had this happen in a long time, or we haven't had it. If you do this, that's going to happen. Why don't we give them constructive messaging? It starts there. Let's be open and honest with each other. If you have an agenda, tell us what it is. Don't hide it under some propaganda. Let's communicate to everybody affected. Somebody died that day and somebody shot him. Let's talk to both sides. How did it break down? We need to hold vigils. There's nothing wrong with a vigil, a remembrance party.
Yeah.
Write compassionate letters to the families. Write your congressman. Post social messages that are positive.
Yeah.
Don't attack each other. Come on.
If we could reduce the rhetoric and just a little bit and put some of that rhetoric into doing something, volunteer, and we'll get away from the specific granular school shootings, but like, what can you do? Your city has committees. They always want people on them. They probably struggle to fill those roles. Your county has committees. There's things that we can all do to participate in our own governance process. When you say vote, you're talking about all the choices have been made for you. You get to decide between the options that are left. That's the very least you can do. And you can be so much more impactful early on. Like, you want a crosswalk in this part of town right here? Cool. Go get to work. Go get on the committee that decides where the crosswalks goes, because there's a committee like that, for crying out loud. And get off Facebook and complaining and being a dick to each other, because that's the first thing we can all do, is quit being a dick to one another.
Absolutely.
Good grief.
Why create more fear and anxiety? And really, and this, again, I know we're not here to debate the gun issue, but if it was as dangerous as they say that it is, and I'm not trying to minimize atrocity, what you just saw, we would all be wearing Kevlar helmets and flak jackets.
Yeah.
The reality is that it's a huge society. There are people that have problems, and somehow that's how they react. You know what? But we can always second guess ourselves. Well, he was warned. Well, maybe he was warned. Why don't we look at ways for making it better? And rather than point and say this guy's a loser with the FBI, find out why it broke down. But the reality is that the society quits putting a label on everybody, which leads me to Task Force Zen. We're nowhere near for that. But healing without labels. And you're right, Pete. Let's just talk.
Yeah.
There's got to be a better way. We're creative. And what I love about the veterans, and I'm not going to say a veteran is the perfect model of a human being, but I will say this. A veteran knows how to work as a team under some pretty stressful environments. Where people are stressed, they're anxious, they're looking for answers, they're angry, they're mad. Take a deep breath. And you said this, take a deep breath, take a collective sigh, and find out how you can be a positive leader in your community. It starts at home. Don't go home ranting and raving about the anti-gun people or the pro-gun people, and your son or your daughter's watching you. Right. How do you think a guy gets like that?
I don't have time for that. For that. It's just like, I know the thing is like the left or the right, when I'm talking to them, they think I'm the other thing. And I'm not. I refuse to be part of either one of those ideologies. I want to figure out what's uncomfortable. What can I take that advances what we think the answer is going to be. And it's the same thing with females in combat or trans people in the military. I don't care. I'm going to tell you right now, combat warrior, as many missions as anybody. No one can say that. I do not have the credentials. I don't care. You can bring a female on combat. If you think it's not possible, you're passé. It's already been happening. Women running guns running a Ma Deuce, a 50 cal machine gun in a turret.
You're right, man. You're right.
I mean, what else is combat but that? Like, you're standing up with a machine gun pointed at people, prepared to receive whatever comes at you, and you're a female. That's combat. I don't know what, but we struggle with this, and my peers on the right, they're like, we can't have trans people in the military. The military will degrade. Will it? Why? Why can't that person serve? I don't even care necessarily about the lethality of that unit. If that person is physically able, and if they're a pro, then I got time for them. I don't care. And if they're not a pro, if they are working towards becoming a pro and will take direction and improve, I've got time for that too, because I have to mentor and bring people up. So if that impacts our lethality, you have someone who's great at their job or willing to become great. I don't care what their gender is or what they perceive. They're not crazy. They're people, and they want to serve their country, and they're entitled to do that. Goodness.
You remember the movie Soylent Green?
Yes.
Charlton Heston. Now, I'm not saying this is what's going to happen, but I always remember the punchline, Soylent Green is people. Well, you know what? Humanity is people.
Yeah.
I just, it's you raised some great points, Pete, because I just watched where this transgender wrestler now I was a wrestler in high school, but she's becoming a he, basically won the state championship in his weight class. It was good wrestling, man. It didn't, everybody else made it more than it was, and the boos certainly weren't needed, but you're right. People are people. We're all struggling on this planet together. And, and there's this disparity between people and this lack of or loss of hope, So why don't we think about basically being more creative instead of reacting in a negative way? Let's think about healing and compassion. While everybody's duking it out over guns, you have parents and relatives crying their eyes out for these kids that were just shot. Let's think about what they're thinking about. So you got an overreactive country. We're all pointing fingers. People are boycotting, pointing fingers, screaming and yelling. And you got people that are hurting, man.
Yeah.
How stupid is that? We're acting like a bunch of idiots. And there's people, there's people that are suffering. And it's not just the people of the relatives who just got shot. There are people at a global level suffering.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. I bring that in a lot too. Is you think you're suffering here in the U.S. You have 3 kinds of freedom that are guaranteed with your government documents. No one else even has that. I mean, maybe there's another place on the planet where that's protected, but where else do you have the opportunity you have from here? Are we perfect? Hell no. But go do what you want to do in fill in the blank country. And there's about 200 countries, and pretty much all of them will reject you. If you could even get in, if they'll even allow you to be a permanent resident, right? So go try to own land in Japan. Go try to own land in Qatar. You can't do that. It won't happen. You won't own it. Yes, you can buy some and share ownership with somebody else, but they actually are the owner by percentage. We have the ability to do incredible things. We had a guy on our show, and he's got this incredible program, and it kind of gets back to this greater thing that you're talking about. His name is Devone Bogan, and his program's called Advanced Peace. And what he does is he goes to an urban area and says, give me the worst 25 people you have, the most evil sons of bitches you got, and I'm going to sit them down, pay them respect, apologize to them, because as a society we've left them behind, because invariably this is the case. Like we've minimized these people to the point where they're just going to do whatever they can to survive and get by. And it's embarrassing as a nation with all the things we have that we leave people behind like this. And so he says, look, here's the reality. Here's your police folder. You're going to go to jail or get killed. If you want to avoid that future, then let us work with you. What do you want to become? Where do you want to go? And it's this wonderful program where there's mentorship. They bring in outside mentors. They ensure that there's some accountability. Like, my guy is going to show up. He's going to be there with you. You're going to fail. We already know that. And our job is to be there with you regardless. We're going to get you through this process, like the process you went through. Because you don't have someone like this, inner city kid. We're going to be that person with you. And it works, John. It doesn't work 100% because nothing does. But the bulk of these guys go, you know what? I do want something more. I do want to become a regular, legitimate person. I didn't think it was possible anymore. I'd given up hope. And think about how terrible that is. These people don't even have hope. And so he goes and he works them through the program. Some of them will die. Some of them will go to jail. Some of them will go to jail and come out and then transition into something better. But as a norm, they become law-abiding, non-criminal citizens who pay taxes. And he does this with the worst people we can dig up. And he does it again and again and again. So, but then when they talk about it in the press, you know what the headline is? Program pays criminals to not commit crime. Like, are you fucking kidding me?
They missed the boat on that one, man.
Yeah.
What paper was that?
Yeah, right. All of them say that. So there is, in fact, a stipend program, and it's a fraction of what a cop would make in overtime working in a dangerous area, a fraction, and they have to earn it. If you participate in the program, yes, we're going to want you to stop selling drugs, so we're going to incent you with money that's below the poverty level, right, for the year. But as you work on yourself, we're going to invest some money into you to ease, because they still have financial burdens, right? And we want to not give that person money. Like, no, double it. If they're doing their stuff, I want to make this easy. I want them productive. But that's the point, is that we've got such a stigma against what he's doing, and what the people choose these terrible lives. They don't choose to live these lives. It's the life that's offered to them. And we have to be better than that. We have to find ways to help victims of abuse, sexual abuse as kids. Did they choose that? No. Did the person who abused them, did they just say, like, I would like to grow up to be a child abuser? That's what I'd like to be. Everybody else, like, that's not how it works. We've got to be better at that. We have to be. You raised some very good points. And, the first one is you're right about the United States of America. I led these guided trips as a mountain guide for 15 years. We traveled all up and down the Andes. And I can assure you, just like Pete just said, this is the finest country in the world when it comes to opportunity. Don't let anybody fool you. Every time I came back from a trip, and I'm not going to name any countries, but they all have mountains in them down there. I love this country. That's all I can say. I basically kiss the ground we walk on, because we're afforded so many luxuries here that people in other nations just dream about. We have them in our back pocket, and we sometimes crap on them. But don't ever think for 1 minute that we're not in the greatest country in the world. We do make mistakes. The second thing is, based on the guy that's doing that amazing work with those criminals, is a fellow that I know up in Washington, D.C. You may know him. He's a Marine. His name is Justin Blazewski. And he started an organization called Vetoga. And what his goal is to take combat veterans. And he had an amazing story to share, his story about how he would go into this Zen mode during rocket attacks. And anyhow, so he wants to take combat veterans, men and women, who have maybe been in some of those places, and instruct them in the 7,000-year-old practice of various forms of yoga. And to put these combat veterans back out into the community to basically bring some balance to where we're at and in their lives as well. And then you talked about the kids. There's a lady up in, I think she's out in Spokane or maybe Tacoma. She's in Tacoma. They just PCS'd out there. She's an Army wife. And she just started an organization called DASIUM. And DASIUM, DASIUM, her name's Judy Davis. I met her in Texas last year. She's working to help educate children and empower them that may be considering suicide, or may have been a kid like me that definitely wasn't, begging for something like that to happen. But kids like that need mentorship that you talked about too, at a level that we can actually make a huge difference. Of course, mentorship can make a huge difference anywhere along the spectrum, but get these kids while they're young and while they're hurting. And then maybe one of those kids who may have been another school shooter, maybe he doesn't do that, or she do that. So it's about leadership. It's about being honest with yourself and being honest with each other. And I said in our talk, Pete, I said what I liked about you was your honesty to admit that you're still trying to figure out. That one sentence over the 2 hours that you and I have been talking and the several hours before we actually had these podcasts says everything about what this is all about. Yeah. It's about personal honesty, and it's about being honest with others. And if we can do that in a way that doesn't create an overreaction and more violence or more of the same behavior, then by God, we've accomplished something. And it's a tall order. I get it. Humans have been doing some dastardly things and for a long, long time. But if you don't try, then don't point fingers. Look at yourself. What could I have freaking done to make a difference in one person's life? Yeah. We affect somebody's life in a positive every day, then we've done something human. And remember, it's about human.
It's not Soylent Green, it's not the apocalypse, but humanity is human, and we need to start acting like humans and not dastard type of human.
And allow for some mistakes. Allow for some failure in yourself first. Like, understand, like, I'm going to make some errors in judgment. I'm going to have to evolve. And the things I think today are likely, a lot of them are wrong. Like, you're going to, like, I can't believe I used to think this. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to think that the emergency brake was my dad's jump handle. And that's how you got up on an overpass. And I kept waiting to see. I knew we did it because we would go on these overpasses, and I'm like, I missed it. And I couldn't put it together in my head. That was obviously wrong. I've had friends say, like, I used to think that the ocean was salted, like with a helicopter, like we purposely salted it. Totally wrong. And I'm making this illustration not because they're funny and they're cute, but those things don't stop as an adult. You see things and perceive them wrong every day, all the time. Like I had a friend on Facebook, and she was like, when your intuition tells you to take it easy and go slow in the morning, you listen. And then she shows a picture of her threadbare tire. Like, it's like, my hashtag my gut kind of thing, right? And it's like, whoa, hold on. Why didn't your intuition tell you to look at your tire 6 months ago before it got to that point? Like, yes, you got it right today, and I'm glad that you're okay, but let's not make your intuition out to be magical. It should have told you a long time ago to maintenance your car, So we make mistakes. We make mistakes in perception all the time. Allow for that. And that person that maybe has a bad day, because we all have those, and they make a choice, and that leads to a choice, and it puts them in a completely different environment than you understand. It doesn't make them stupid. It doesn't make them weak. It doesn't make them anything other than the person that they've become because of that. And we can take that person, whether they're eating out of a dumpster or whatever it is, and we can actually care about how they got there, understand that, and appreciate. Nobody chooses to go live on the streets and eat out of a dumpster. That's not what they choose. They've got significant problems, and if we're not dicks to those people, what would you do? You'd say, I wouldn't want those problems. Nobody wants your problems. You don't want anybody else's problems. So how do you help someone who has problems that you don't understand? You don't start by being a jerk and a judgmental person and say you chose these terrible things. They're in an environment. The same thing with an Iraqi or an Afghan or someone from Iceland. They have different paths and they equal different outcomes.
No, they do. And those are more great points, Pete. One thing that I picked up on the first month that I was actually in my own dark place and I reached out for help was, that my therapist, God bless her, looked at me and she said, you know what? I can't promise I'm going to save your marriage, but I can tell you this. If you do the homework, I can save you. And I took that to heart, tackled a lot of tough issues, that sexual assault survivors go through.
Yeah.
All I can say is that if you don't try and you don't start somewhere, if you don't start taking a look inside and maybe changing the way you do some things, then you're going to continue to keep getting what you get. But you're right. And don't beat yourself up when you make that mistake, because you're going to make them. I make them every day. I don't say the right thing sometimes. I get a side glance and, or whatever. It's like you said, I made a mistake and maybe should have put gas in and ran out of gas. But don't beat yourself up when you make those mistakes, because I can tell you they're going to come. There's no way in hell that you can be a human being in this society or on this planet and not make a mistake. Just don't beat yourself up when you do. And if you do make one, just, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and drive on.
Yeah. Are you doing your best?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a good test. Am I doing my best right now? Like, could I do better? And the answer sometimes is no, I'm doing my best. Then ease up on yourself a little bit, Pete. Come on. And then if you're not doing your best, then that's where the work is. Ratchet it up. Do your best.
I read something. Where was this? Let me see if I can find this real quick. It was in I think it was in General McChrystal's book, Team of Teams. But you can take this and apply this to your life, no matter what kind of team you're actually working with or what you're doing. And he talks about, we got to look at this in a human sense. Here it is right here. We are an elite tribe. We're humans. We control this bad boy, right? We're made up by great individuals who have to be the best at what they do every single day. Because you know what? You have to be good to survive here. You have to be. If you're bad all the time, chances are karma's going to catch up with you. Mm-hmm. Each of us has to earn our place in this tribe every day. Earn your place. Do something positive for a change. Each of us needs to exceed the expectations of our teammates, our fellow humans. Let's pick each other up, and we expect them to do the same for us. So if I make a mistake, don't be angry with me and say, oh, you're just one of those. Help me. Show me some error of my ways. But let's work together. We are an elite tribe. The humans are the elite tribes of the animal kingdom. Let's quit acting like animals. Let's act like humans. Let's reach inside and look at our hearts, and let's do this thing. You know, I don't want to be angry and full of anxiety and fear every time I walk outside my door and have my own kids look at me like I'm some kind of wild man. I want to be level-headed. I want to be compassionate. I want to be what humans can be when they put their mind to it. And then let's create. Let's have connections like this where you're such a creator, and the people that you've mentioned, the people that we've mentioned, let's create something together that we can be proud of. We can do it. Gosh, look at the things that man has done over the centuries. You think we can make some things happen? I do.
There's a Tesla in orbit right now. There's a Tesla in orbit right now. I mean,
awesome, man. That's freaking incredible. And that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Those kinds of things.
Yeah.
We can do it, Pete. I'm telling you, we can do it.
This is John Krotec talking from Green Zone Heroes and Straight Outta Combat Radio. He's an incredible dude. I want you guys to take a look. Go look and see about the businesses that are legitimate with them, that like they're pro-veteran if you want to be in that world, and I imagine most of our listeners do, and support what he does. Look for more from them, from us, working together. We're going to try to figure out some ways to support one another. And just from me to you, from all of us to you, John, thank you so much for what you do. I'm proud of you for fighting out of your struggle and not saying I'm good and walking on, like saying I got better. Now let me keep getting better and help some other people too, because we all, everyone needs a hand up at some point. And if not, then you better get two hands going down to help two people up, because that's how we all do this. That's how we get better. And we do, believe it or not, everybody, we do live in a great place, and we do wonderful things, and we don't have to win every engagement. We do get to make some mistakes, and you know, let's keep that in mind. Let's be a little easier on each other, and I don't know, just thanks, John, man. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you, Pete, and I appreciate you as well. Very honored to be here. You've had some great guests. I feel humbled to be in line, and I just want to make a final statement or something for people to think about. And you know, do you believe in freedom? And do you truly know what it means? And think about this. Freedom is not being able to do whatever the hell you want. Freedom means that you do the right thing. And that's, you know, whatever the right thing is that intuition that you talk about, something that's good for a change. But honored to know you, Pete. I know that we're going to do some great work in the future. And right now I'm taking it one day at a time, and just very blessed to know you, man.
All right, everybody. John Krotec. Look him up.